Hi everyone and welcome back. 2 years ago, FiiO released their best shot at personal audio, and I'm pretty sure that many of you are still using their K9 Pro, either the A-Cam or ESS version even today. But in 2 years, many things have changed, and both A-Cam and ESS technologies released their new flagship DAC chips, and also all the newest top-of-the-line headphones are incredibly inefficient, so clearly FiiO needed to respond to this new challenge, not only outperforming their K9 Pro, but also offering additional features for the gamer, for the audiophile, cinephile, for the studio mixer in you. And that's exactly how their K19 came to be, offering additional features, quadrupling the power output, and also upping the price to $1,300 US. I'll be trying it with a bunch of headphones, as you can see, amps, loudspeakers, via its internal power supply, and also with an external overkill power supply. I'll be adding a comparison at the end of this video, so please stay tuned for all of that. FiiO always cared about the look of the devices, always choosing minimalist, futurist, modern design, and of course we got the same treatment. But this time around it's much slimmer, as you can see, and this came as a surprise, knowing how much tech is cramped inside this unit. And also, I pretty like how slim it is. I believe this is the slimmest flagship DAC combo that I have tried so far. It can be used horizontally or vertically, as you can see, but clearly FiiO recommends using it in this way, so horizontally. Usually they are providing some kind of plastic metal fit with their desktop units, and this time around we got screw type aluminum fit, which are looking pretty amazing, and of course much sturdier. They have rubber pads right here, so clearly it will not scratch your table, which is great. They're also offering a plasticky headphone holder, something like that, so clearly they're recommending using it in this way, in this stance, and of course it will occupy little to no desktop space in your office. Its entire bottom and top plate have these massive openings, as you can see, shaped as honeycombs, so clearly the air is moving in and out much easier. And after using this one for about 48 hours straight, it was barely warm at touch, so clearly it has an amazing heat dissipation, and it should have a much longer service life than usual. A remote control is also being offered in the package, and while it's made out of plastic, this is clearly a higher quality remote compared to what I'm usually getting with those SMSL and topping devices, so you can easily integrate this one into a stereo setup. It does have a simple front panel. We have the usual 4-pin XLR and 4.4mm balanced outputs. We have a regular 1/4 inch headphone output. We have a 1.3 inch colorful LCD display. We have a USB Type-C output. We have a menu navigator right here, and also a volume knob, which also acts as an on-off button. Taking a glance on its back, you'll soon realize how advanced and feature-packed this unit really is. We have a DC and AC socket, since it can be powered by internal or by an external power supply. We have an HDMI input and HDMI output, a 12-volt trigger in and out, a ground and lift switch in case you are dealing with ground loops. We have another USB Type-C input and an RS-232 port. We have 2 optical and 2 coaxial inputs, 2 pairs of RCA lineouts, and a pair of XLR outputs. Under its hood, things have drastically changed versus K9 Pro or versus the regular K9. First of all, we have a very powerful hardware parametric equalizer, a highly precise 31-band lossless parametric EQ, and you can even apply various effects such as dynamic range compensation and dynamic range enhancement, as well as an advanced limiter to prevent clipping. All of this is supported by Windows and Mac computers, and you can do that even with the FiiO Control app, downloadable via iOS Store or Google Play Store. Unfortunately, the FiiO Control app wasn't updated yet, so I cannot find K19 in that list, but I'm told it will be updated shortly, so clearly we can change all of that and many other features via that app, so stay tuned for an update. At this point you can play with EQ directly from its user menu, but I'm a purist at heart. I don't like playing with EQ, so no further adjustments are needed from my part. K19 is powered not by one but by two flagship ESS 9039S Pro DAC chips, which are basically the newest flagship DAC chips of ESS Technologies. The timing of the unit is being controlled by two aqua silicon femtosecond clocks, and everything is being controlled by a very powerful quad-core FPGA. The headphone amplifier section saw a massive boost in power. We have custom-made THX-AAA 788 Plus modules, 8 of them, and the power went up from 2 watts on the K9 Pro and the regular K9 to 8 watts of power in the same load and 32 ohms. So finally we can drive basically anything we want, including super inefficient headphones like Susvara HE6, DCS Stealthy, Expanse, Abysses, you name it, anything really. Although the unit is quite slim, we have two PCB boards, I presume one for the DAC section, one for the headphone amplifier section. Both PCB boards are shielded completely for a much lower channel crosstalk and also for a better signal transmission. There is so much more about the K19. I will leave a link below in case you want to learn more about its inner workings. As for me, I'm ready to hit some eardrums and tell you everything you need to know about its sound in an overkill fashion. Sound-wise, first of all, I need to confess something to you. After unpacking this one, I immediately started listening to music via Headphone Susvara. These are still one of the most used headphones of mine, especially when using this kind of reviews, DAC amp combo reviews, because these are incredibly resolving. And finally, it was able to drive the damn Susvara to very head-crushing volumes, something that both K9 AKM and K9 Pro couldn't do. But something was not really clicking into place. It was ultra linear, ultra resolving, very honest sounding, super technical sounding, very fast. But the sound was not really engaging, and what was more unusual is that it was not dynamic at all. Something that both K9 Pro and K9 AKM were better in this regard. But after checking FiiO's website and seeing those tons of capacitors, Panasonic, Vima, Elna Silmic, and tons of resistors as well, it was clear to me that it will need at least a few days until it will start firing up some machine gun-like notes. And sure enough, about 4 days later, dynamics were completely, changed. It's a 180-degree turn in terms of dynamics, because finally it was punching pretty hard, finally it was engaging, finally I could enjoy my fast electronica tunes, modern tunes, something that it was not doing that great in the first days. So please don't judge it in the first 4 days or so, because it needs a little bit of runtime until it gives you everything. I connected it to my Roon server via USB. Roon saw it immediately, and I engaged my wacky electronica playlist and I started listening, and sure enough, the change was actually quite apparent. And again, finally it was dynamic, punchy sounding. The transients are very fast but also quite hard slamming. Finally, I can say about hard slamming basses with FiiO devices, although I probably said that about K9 Pro, M17 and Q7, but this one is surely slamming much harder in the bass. At first you might feel that the bass is slightly elevated, but that is not really the case. Since we have more power in this one, everything that has to do with bass is actually more punchy sounding, revitalized, and if your headphones can deliver that kind of energy in the low end, then clearly K19 will be showing that to you. The sound finally started stretching much wider. It was no longer playing inside my head but at an arm's reach, something that I can rarely say about DAC amp combos with THX-AAA tech, but I presume having more power on board, more capacitors that can store power, made it somehow bigger sounding, more impactful and more holographic sounding at the same time. If I would summarize in just a few words the change that happened after 4 days, that would be a much better bass slam, a much better control in the bass, and just a wider soundscape that stretches much wider. The overall sound signature of the K19 is very similar to the K9 Pro, so again, nothing is really out of balance in terms of bass, mid-range and treble, nothing is going up and down, so please don't expect lots of sweetness or warmth. But of course, you can do that by boosting the mid-range via that parametric EQ. You can lower the upper treble by a little bit for a more relaxed listen, something that you cannot do with K9 Pro or with the regular K9, for example. I must confess that lately I'm not into this ultra-linear, ultra-resolving type of sound that can be clinical at times. I like to hear some sweet lies now and then. I like to hear a more organic tonality, and while K19 is not providing me that by default, after engaging that parametric EQ, you can boost the mid-range, the bass a little bit, or you can remove some energy in the treble, something that both K9 and K9 Pro couldn't do on their own. It so happens that I have an overkill linear and regulated power supply that I can use with the K19. It's the Kisses P14, which costs a little bit more than the K19 itself. Deep down, I hoped that it will make a difference. I hope that it will not sound better, but different. You know, maybe a little bit in terms of frequency response, maybe a little bit in tonality, but I really hoped that something will change in its sound when swapping from AC to DC power. What's interesting about this unit is that you can connect both an AC cable and DC cable, and with a flip of the switch, you can listen to this one via DC power or AC power. So that's exactly what I did. And as much as I have tried this one in a stereo setup, in a headphone setup, with a bunch of headphones, with those loudspeakers, via AC power, via DC power, it sounded absolutely identical. The same dynamics, the same frequency response, the same power output. There was no difference at all. And this is great info. It means that we have an outstanding switching mode power supply implementation. So this should save you a lot of time and money. So please don't get a linear power supply for the K19 because it will sound absolutely the same. Let's talk about its headphone amplifier performance, but first let's talk a little about the K9 Pro and the regular K9, which worked outstanding with most of my headphones, except for Susvara or HE6 by HiFiMan, which sounded kinda flabby, uncontrolled, not very punchy, not very dynamic, and worst of all, the bass was missing the action. So the bass was kinda lightweight and ethereal sounding with the Susvara. Right now we have 4 times the power compared to K9 Pro and the regular K9. Finally, I can go much louder. Finally, these are no longer flabby or uncontrolled. So the tightness is definitely there. These are sounded fast but also impactful. The bass is no longer missing the action, so finally I can say about things like dynamics and bass slam with HiFiMan Susvara, something that was not really the case with K9 and K9 Pro. The added power makes a significant difference with something like HiFiMan Susvara, but I must say that the rest of my headphones also saw a slight improvement. For example, Meze Audio just released Lyric 2, which likes to have a healthy dose of current intake compared to the first generation. And I must say that they sounded lively, more engaging compared to what I was getting from K9 AKM. And the same can be said about HD100S by Sennheiser, adding a little bit of oomph in the bass. The sound was still kind of big and deep on the K19 compared to K9 AKM. Overall, its headphone amplifier section is very powerful, it's tight, it's controlled, it's resolving, but I still wish that FiiO will move away from its THX-AAA tech and start making their own fully discrete Class AB or Class A headphone amplifiers, but it's their call. We need to have a chat regarding its resolving abilities, its transparency, and the so-called detail retrieval. What I'm going to say will probably anger some of you or put a question mark around your head, but hey, it's my experience and you need to know about this one. When I connected this one via USB Type-C to my Roon Core and later to the Eversolo DMP-A8, the sound became freer, it was easier to enjoy, it was pouring more naturally, it just became more analog-like in a way compared to the same USB Type-C connection connected to my PC. I still enjoyed its sound when connected to my PC via USB Type-C, but it was a little bit harsher, a little bit grainier. The sound was not pouring so easily. And I'm sorry to say this, but for the absolute best results, a dedicated streamer is mandatory. And it's not about resolution or transparency, but about sounding less digital and more analog, about getting a more pleasing tonality long term. Apart from this, picture that we're dealing with one of the most resolving sounding DACs at this price point, even compared to kilobuck units. And I know that K9 Pro and K9 were already highly resolving, clean and detailed, but this one is even more so. And the difference can be perceived not only with Susvara, but with plenty of headphones actually. I connected it to my pre and power combo, driving the Radio TD 2.2, and the added resolution was felt immediately versus the K9 AKM, for example. More nuances started appearing out of my tunes, the vocal cords were better defined, tiny sounds started going to the surface in a natural, unforced way, and at this exact price point, I don't know if you can do better in terms of resolution and detail retrieval. Dynamics and Transients saw quite an improvement versus K9 Pro, and I presume that a much more powerful headphone amplifier section simply added more rumble, more oomph, more meat on the bone in the low end, in the bass, compared to K9 Pro. And no, you don't really need super hard to drive headphones to feel the bass slam, so you don't really need the Susvaras, the Abysses, the Tungstens, because it will sound punchier with any half decent headphones. Hell, even with loudspeakers it was more dynamic, it was infusing a little bit more life in the low end, in the bass, compared to K9 AKM, for example. You'll hear more energy using from low end, adding additional layers to the sound. With all that being said, a fully discrete Class A headphone amplifier like a one S17 Pro had a more natural tone and timbre. It had a longer natural decay of the notes, more texture, more meat on the bone. And maybe when it comes to sheer dynamics, S17 Pro and K19 will feel very similar, both pushing and pulling drivers with so much ease, but when showing off the timbre of the music, S17 Pro would be my weapon of choice. Soundstage is always a controversial topic, especially via headphones, but I'll add a little bit more salt and pepper to this open wound and tell you that it sounded more holographic, more spacious, it had a better separation in between the notes when a dedicated streamer was connected to it rather than a PC or a laptop. It makes a 100-degree turn, sounding both wider and deeper, and needless to say, I don't want to connect it to my PC anymore. I don't know what is causing this, but clearly a dedicated streamer makes quite a difference in this department in terms of imaging, depth and soundstage. This way it outperforms both the K9 AKM and K9 Pro in the holography department, finally sounding like a proper DAC amp combo. I don't think it's a great idea talking about the frequency response of this unit because it's very linear, it's very similar to K9 Pro. You can rewatch that video that I posted a long time ago, just boost the bass by a little bit, add some tightness and control, and you'll get the sound of the K19. I'll make a single comparison and that will be with the freshly released K9 AKM. If I'm using the half-mount Susvara, then you'll feel immediately several things when switching to the K9 AKM. The resolution goes lower, the sound isn't as transparent and separated anymore. The control of the drivers isn't as impressive and the sound is no longer punchy and powerful. But truth to be told, Susvara don't work that well on the K9 AKM, so it's not that surprising. Switching to the Meze Elite, dynamics are finally making a glowing return on the K9 AKM, but still the sound isn't as resolving, tight and explosive, especially with fast-paced music. K9 AKM, however, has a single ace under its sleeve, and that is tone and timbre, which makes my music easier to listen to, easier to follow, easier to enjoy and immerse yourself. K9 AKM is indeed losing on every aspect in terms of technicalities. It's not as fast, not as resolving, not as powerful, not as holographic and big sounding, but it's a bit sweeter sounding. Some might say it's more organic sounding. Overall, I'd say that K19 is better, and if you use it for mixing and editing, then it's much better, offering a higher freedom and a stronger feature set. Wrapping up, K19 feels like a K9 Pro ESS on steroids. Everything went up except for the noise floor, which went down. The sound is now clearer, you can finally use all the hottest headphones out there, including super hard to drive ones, You can watch a movie or two or play a game since we have HDMI inputs and outputs. The parametric EQ will also make a splash, and since you can save a few presets, that will work not only with a headphone or two, but you can save presets basically for all your headphones. The best part, it's now cooler looking than ever, and I'm glad that its price point hasn't doubled as I have expected. $1,300 is still a lot of money, but it proved to be versatile not only in my office, but also in the living room, working great as a DAC and preamp combo, and getting my stamp of approval. Thank you guys for watching. Please consider subscribing if you like this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers!